that sits, oh, that's really gross. Hi friends, welcome back to the Avocado Toast Budget. If you're new here, my name is Lexa, and today we are kicking it back, I haven't done one of these in a while, to a reacting to Dave Ramsey video. And this one is a doozy. I got some things to say about this one. I honestly didn't think that it would be that bad, and it just kept getting worse. I love these kinds of videos, and I haven't done one in a while, and I got a couple of comments from people asking about them and saying that they missed them, so that was all I needed to film another one. So today we are reacting to a video called We Really Need a Car, Are Car Payments Okay? He goes into a lot of things that have nothing to do with car payments, so like I just kind of watched it because it was a very viewed video on his like highlights, so I wanted to know what it was about. I didn't think I was going to use it as a reaction video, and within like a minute into the video I was like, okay, here we go. So if you don't even care about car payments, don't worry, there's like so much more to it in this video. That's not the main focus. As a reminder, I never believe in attacking people personally on things that they cannot change. There is a lot to attack about Dave Ramsey and to call him out for and to speak about, that there's no need for like personal attacks. He does enough of that to his audience members by calling them stupid and moronic. We don't need any of that here. All of this is just about deconstructing the wrong things that he says, the things that I disagree with, maybe some of the things that I agree with, and talking about why I believe that a lot of his content is unethical and harmful. So if you like these kinds of videos, if you want to learn more about saving, paying off debt, investing, and how to finally feel more confident with your money, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below, push that bell notification, that way you never miss an upload, and let's go ahead and get into it.
Eric is with us in Olympia, Washington. Hi, Eric. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
Better than I deserve. What's up?
Hey, I have a little bit of a disagreement with my wife. I was hoping you could tip the scales and give us some outside perspective. She wants to move up in car. I'd like to save up and pay cash for the vehicle. However, she thinks that having a larger savings is okay. She wants to finance the vehicle, and she's okay with having a car payment if it means we have a larger savings. And I tried to explain to her about, depreciation and tell her why it's stupid to get debt. But I think she needs to hear it from somebody else, so I was hoping you could speak to that a little bit.
Okay, before he speaks to that, I want to say a couple of things to note here that will matter here in a little bit. This is his wife's car. He has a car, his wife has a car. We'll talk about the state of her car in a minute, but it's not good. Like, it could break down at any minute. And they do have a lot in they're like financially stable. So the big question here is, he's wanting to know, do we use our savings to pay for a car in full, keep saving up, that way we can cover a new car in full, get her into something better, or do we use some of our money from savings to pay a down payment on a car and then finance a car? I don't know if he ever specifically says that like she wants a new car. It sounds like throughout this video that it's more so just about getting a new to them car. It doesn't necessarily need to be a new car, but I don't know if he specifically says that. So just something to keep in mind.
The thing I've noticed after 30 years of doing this is that different classes of people, regardless of race, different socioeconomic rungs on the ladder, do different stupid things. Poor people, the rough end of town, play the lottery more often than anybody else. Lottery tickets are almost all sold in poor zip codes. Payday lenders, 800% interest. Rent to own, title pawning. You don't see these places in the rich end of town. You know why? Because rich people don't do them. That's how they got rich.
Okay, this, what are we, 124, but I think he started talking about it under a minute. This was the moment that I was like, we gotta talk about some things here. Because he's getting, it's like so close to the point, yet so far away. He has a point, right? Payday lenders, lottery tickets, they're sold more in low income areas. I would not describe that as the rough side of town, especially because he felt the need to throw in it's not about race, which if you feel the need to throw in that it's not about race, the thing that's coming out of your mouth is probably insinuated to be racist. If it's not about race, you don't feel the need to say it's not about race. However, the thing that I have the biggest issue with here is not the fact that he's pointing out that that's true, because it is true. It's the fact that he's jumping to the conclusion that the reason that predatory things like payday lenders, lottery tickets are sold more and more accessible in low income areas is because rich people don't use them and don't need them, and they make non-stupid choices, and it's the poor people in the rough areas of town that are making stupid choices. No, that's not why. They're there for the same reason that you see the military recruiting at low-income high schools. It's predatory. The reason that lottery tickets are sold more often and found more often in low-income areas or the lower income side of town is because more often that is where gas stations, convenience stores, those small grocery stores, the places that people buy lottery tickets at are found. You don't buy lottery tickets at a Whole Foods or a local mom and pop shop organic store that you're probably going to find in more upper end neighborhoods in that upper end side of town. You don't find those things in the upper side of town because people don't feel the need to take desperate measures to try to get out of the situation that they are in. It's absolutely disgusting and makes zero sense when you think about it for more than 2 seconds to jump to the conclusion that payday lenders are in low income sides of town and target people in low income because people in low income are stupid. No, it's because when that is your only option, that is the only way you're going to get away with 800%, 1,000% interest rates, is when people are so desperate that they have no other option. And people are not that desperate when they're in upper classes, so they're not going to pay those prices. It is not stupid decisions that allow payday lenders to exist. It is desperation in a system that has created such a large gap between the top 1% and everyone else at the bottom. Are payday loans awful? Yeah, absolutely. But you are not awful if you take out a payday loan. If you are at a place where you feel like you have no other option to be able to make ends meet or to exist and survive in this system, it is not your fault that the payday lenders are allowed to charge you such high interest rates. It's the fact that capitalism exists and these places go unchecked and the government doesn't put regulations on that kind of predatory loan pricing. And a lot of times they are set up in a way where they're payday loans, right? You are supposed to be able to take them out and make ends meet before you get paid again. So the way that they present these to you makes it seem like you're spending a lot less money in interest on the loan because they don't say it as 800% interest. They divide it by like a smaller week or 2-week amount. But then what ends up happening is that people continue to cycle. Something happens. A lot of times if you don't have an emergency fund established, then if one thing happens, you have an extra bill you forgot about, your car breaks down. It's just this cycle of poverty that we see. Poverty and the cycle of poverty that the system has created is the reason that these exist and that they exist in larger quantities in lower income areas, not because poor people are stupid and make stupid decisions. That part just in general got me going. Because the fact that he says it like it's a fact, if I were watching that and I were someone who was dealing with trying to navigate a payday loan that felt impossible to get out of, while also trying to be able to afford to eat and pay rent, I would feel so shitty about myself. So terrible about myself. Ugh, it's disgusting. And then he profits off of the shame. Ugh.
Okay. In the middle class struggles with credit cards, with student loans, with car payments, and with whole life insurance. And they give their money. The middle class ensures that they're never going to be anything but middle class by being in debt to credit card companies and car companies, and borrowing and using whole life policies, which are a complete ripoff, and credit cards. And so, and then you look at the upper class and go, okay, what do? Well, we want to mimic that because 90%.
I will agree on the point that whole life insurance is not a good deal. It's predatory. It is set up to make you think that you need it, and it's nearly never worth it. And 99% of the people that it's sold to are not the people who it is supposed to benefit. So we agree on that point. However, the narrative that the decisions that the middle class is making are the reasons why they can't move up to the upper class is like so untrue. We already know how much of a gap there is between the middle and the upper class, and it is not your use of credit cards that is stopping you from getting there and being ultra wealthy. It's the fact that minimum wage hasn't risen in 20 years. It's the fact that student loan debt is keeping most of millennials and people in the middle class from ever feeling like they are going to be able to make decisions with some amount of freedom and take some risks to start their own business or pursue a different side hustle or side hobby reality because they are so bogged down and stressed out with the amount of student loans that they took on because it was promised to us that they would be such a good investment and kind of just pushed onto us without us having any understanding of how it worked. And then we graduate, and a lot of millennials graduated into a recession where we couldn't get the jobs that we were told we would be able to get after we graduated. And here we are with a bunch of student loan debt that we can't pay off. So,
of millionaires in America started with nothing and became millionaires. They didn't inherit their money. They're not crooks and they're not professional athletes. They're regular people. They just did things different. So what do? Okay,
I paused it kind of in the middle of that stat, but if you don't remember, his stat is that 90% of millionaires are self-made and didn't inherit their wealth. That's very misleading. I've done a lot of research on this because I kept seeing this stat pop up everywhere, but it was like a completely different number depending on who was saying it. I saw everything between 70 and 80 and 88% and 90 and 96% and whatever of millionaires are self-made. So I wanted to ask myself, how old are these people? Because being a millionaire at retirement is not unheard of. A lot of people need $1 million to their net worth in order to retire and have income at retirement. So if you're older, then if you're at retirement age, then that makes sense. And that's not like abnormal. And to say that they're like self-made without talking about how they spent their entire life building up to that wealth is a little misleading. And then also, what does self-made even mean? So I did a lot of research into this. The majority of the studies that people quote on this, and the ones that I would assume he was quoting at the time, define self-made by the person saying they are self-made. There are no regulations for what self-made means. It is only, usually they literally ask, would you consider yourself self-made? Do you consider yourself to be self-made? If you know anything about statistics, you know that there is a bias that comes with these kind of like qualitative research studies that shows that a lot of times people want to look good. They want to make themselves look better than they are. It's this like social desirability bias, and you have to factor that in and you have to like take your data and ask questions in a way that kind of works around that and compensates for that, because no one wants to like say that they're not self-made, because there is this stigma with not being self-made. There's this stigma with you did not work for your money. You inherited your money. It's daddy's money. No one wants to admit that, right? So you have to compensate for that and design your studies in a way that is still able to prove that they are self-made, even if that social desirability bias is there. And these studies did not do that. The only study I could find that wasn't really a study-ish that had any sort of like standards for what self-made meant is the Forbes 500 list of like, and they rank people on like a self-made scale of 1 to 10. However, I did probably tens of hours of research onto this to try to figure out what each number meant, and also to figure out who fit into each number. On that, I was very dedicated to this. I spent like a week. Literally the only thing I could find is that Forbes considered anyone 5 or above, 5 to 10, to be self-made. However, that could include you inheriting any amount of money as long as you did not inherit the family business, the money-making business. So what he is saying here, they didn't inherit anything. That's bullshit. That's not true. They could have inherited millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, been given money from people, had opportunities that most of us would never ever have that helped them to get to where they are. As long as they did not inherit the money-making business, then they're counted as self-made. When I think of self-made, I definitely don't think of inheriting millions of dollars and then becoming a millionaire. No fucking shit. So I just wanted to talk on that because I planned on making a video, but then it was just so much information I ended up never actually releasing that footage. I did film a video, but I want to film a video about it in the future, but just know this statistic that 90% of millionaires are self-made, either way you're looking at it, it's bullshit. Self-made is a myth. It does not exist. Everyone has some amount of luck, help, coincidence that goes into their ability to build wealth and to get to where they were going. It doesn't mean they didn't work hard. It doesn't mean that they didn't struggle, but it does not mean that they are completely self-made. And saying it like this makes it feel like they're doing it, so why aren't you? And that is such a toxic mentality to have, especially as someone who is profiting from poor people and their shame.
And I'm interviewing people on the Millionaire Theme Hour, for example. I ask them How many new cars have you bought before you were a millionaire? They almost always told me one or two, and it was the worst mistake of my life. How much did debt cause you, borrowing money, cause you to become wealthy? They almost always say, oh, no, I never borrowed any money. That was a blessing. Every time I borrowed money, it held me back from building wealth. And so that's what rich people say. And what your broke brother-in-law thinks, or what some journalism student with $82,000 in student loan debt writes on Market Watch, I couldn't care less about. Or is a guest contributor for Motley Fool, and they meant fool for sure. I mean, I don't care if you're broke what your opinion is about money. You follow me? So
we all know this, right? He says this all of the time. It's the reason why whenever I talk about things and speak out against him, the most common thing is, what's your net worth? Well, I'll listen to him because he's worth $200 million. Because in a very cult-like mentality, he builds up this idea that listening to anyone else other than him is stupid. And that don't listen to stupid people, don't listen to the other people who have some very important things to say and data to back it up because they're broke and stupid. We already know this. I talk about it in literally every reaction video because he says it in every video. However, the words that he said, I don't care about your opinions on money if you're broke, is a very bold thing to say as a personal finance educator. Because if you only care about and look at the wealthy, what they're doing, what they're saying, you are turning your back on your audience and their needs and their wants and their perspective and opinions. And that is cult mentality, and that is unhealthy and toxic and privileged. So I totally believe him. I completely believe that he doesn't give a fuck about poor people or their opinions or their perspective. And it's just so frustrating when that's the opinion and perspective from people that made you who you are. You are wealthy because of those people and their lived experiences. And to get on air and say that you don't care about it, it's terrible. I can't imagine someone coming up to me and telling me, hey, this is my perspective, this is what I have seen work for me and what doesn't, this is what I'm struggling with, and me being like, I don't care about your opinion because you're broke. What? Because that's exactly what he's saying. Oh, it's so unfortunate. Because I feel like if he just turned the fuck around and listened to the people who are lining his pockets, then he wouldn't say stuff like this, and he would be more empathetic, and he wouldn't keep perpetuating these ideas of shame and guilt and you attaching your worth to your finances and your financial decisions.
Follow the money here. Show me the money. It's a Jerry Maguire moment. And if rich people say the best way to become wealthy is stay out of debt, then we do what rich people say because that's how they got there. And you can't, there's just no disputing that. And the bottom line is this. The average car payment in America now, last month, we got data that it's now $501 a month is the average.
Gosh.
Okay, $500 a month invested from age 30 to age 70 in a decent growth stock mutual fund in a Roth IRA is over $5.6 million.
Okay, I wanted to talk about this here because he's right in the sense that I don't agree with mutual funds, and I think the only reason he peddles mutual funds is because he profits off of that. Well, he profits off of the financial advisors who then advise you on what mutual funds, even though mutual funds have been proven time and time again to lose you money and not be worth the fees that they have. That's not the point. The point here is the way that he is forming this makes it sound like your car payment over the long term is costing you $5 million. And that is not the case. This is just another great example of him phrasing things and only showing one side in a way that works for him and his narrative and what he is selling, rather than doing what he is supposed to be doing as a personal finance educator and giving everyone all of the information so that they can decide what works best for them. Because yes, he's right that you could make $5 million off of that. However, by leaving out the fact that you're not just throwing away that money, you're putting it towards something else. So there is an alternative, right? The average APR for a car loan for used or a new car, if your credit score is over 660, is 2.5% to 5%. The market on average returns 10 to 12% a year. Over time. So you can't just say that you're missing out on this money that you could be investing because people still need a fucking car. This lady is driving a car that's about to break down. So it's not just between investing and not. It is what are you going to do with the money that you have. So looking at this situation, they have a bunch of options, right? Like they already have some money, so they could, in theory, she doesn't have to buy a new car. I agree with him on what he was saying, that like I'm sure a lot of rich people do regret buying new cars because the second you drive it off the lot, it depreciates in value. We all know that. However, you don't have to buy a new car to buy a new to you nice car. So what he's leaving out is that they could buy a decently nice car with some of the money that they have and then also financing part of it. And if it fits in their budget where they can still make those car payments and put some money toward investing, they're actually at that point leveraging their car payment, because the other option might be that they stop investing at all so that they can save up as much as money as they possibly can to put toward a car to pay it in full. But what you're not showing with that, you're missing out on $5 million perspective, is that you're also missing out on a ton of money if you are not investing and if you're using that time to pay for a car in full instead, when if they have a decent credit score, the money that they're putting toward that car could be leveraged to make them more money in the market if they continue to invest while also making their car payment. So it's just frustrating because he's not painting the full picture, and he's not letting them know that in theory, they could, if they can afford it and it fits in their budget and it works for them, still build a ton of wealth and actually leverage a car payment so that they can continue to invest, make more money in the market than they're losing out on the interest that they're paying in their car, and get the best of both worlds. So honestly, this is a big issue I have with Dave. I watch time and time again as he like throws out stats that sound scary against debt and sound scary against the things that he disagrees with, but he doesn't paint the full picture, which doesn't allow people to actually like take control of their finances and decide what works best for them. But that wouldn't support his narrative that all debt is bad. So of course he just focuses on the thing that makes it seem like no matter what they did, paying or financing for a car is a terrible choice that's costing them millions of dollars in the long run.
That's what a car payment costs you. It's $5 million over the scope of your life. And so that's why, you know, rich people don't have car payments, because that's how they got rich. And so
rich people don't have car payments because they can afford easily to buy multiple cars in full.
the point is, your most powerful wealth building tool is your income, and you can't make middle class mistakes with money and be anything but middle class. And there's nothing immoral or ignoble about being middle class. It's a matter of if you eat the same food fat people eat, you're going to be fat.
Right.
Duh, you know? And if you want to be skinny, find out what skinny people eat and eat what they eat. I wish I could do more of that. I don't do enough of it myself. But I mean, it's a great example, right? Find out somebody's been...
Okay, this isn't money related. And because I always watch these over the first time, A, to just make sure that they're entertaining, but B, to have like some sort of an idea of where to stop what I'm going to say. I considered cutting this part out just because I hate that he says this, and I know it can be really triggering for people, but I think that ultimately it's important to leave in and to talk against and to speak out against this mentality. This video was filmed in 2017. I will give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he no longer feels this way and has educated himself, although unlikely because he still makes comments like this, but just keep that in mind. However, I want to talk out real quick about this fat phobia and diet culture shit that he's spewing, because not only do I feel like it's important if you heard that and it was triggering or you kind of internalized that for someone to tell you that it's wrong, but also because it's, again, another example of him just like using a metaphor that works for him that isn't even a metaphor that does work for him because it's been proven time and time again that A, fatness is not equated to health in any way. It does not increase your chances for diabetes or heart disease or early death, anything like that. It's been proven by multiple studies. Also, that this idea that like if you eat what skinny people eat, you will be skinny too is completely untrue. It has also been proven by science time and time again that everyone has a set weight point that their body is going to fight to bring them back to. So what happens with diets, the reason that diets don't work, 95% of diets don't work, the 5% of time that they do, they end up in disordered eating or eating disorders, is because our body is programmed to keep itself safe and alive and healthy, and diets feel like famine to our body, and our body is going to fight to get back to that set point that it is comfortable with and that is genetically programmed inside of us for us to be at when it comes to weight. The only way for you to change that. You can't decrease your set point. Your body is going to fight to get you back up to what it was, no matter how hard you fight to decrease it. The only way to change it is actually increasing it, and you increase it through dieting, through over and over telling your body that you do not trust it and that you are going to starve it through diets because that's what it sees. And then to combat that, it is going to increase that set weight point, which is totally neutral. There's nothing wrong with that because weight is neutral and fatness is neutral. But the point here is that even his metaphor proves that he's wrong, because just like he's saying, just do what rich people do and you'll be rich, is completely untrue and ignores systemic oppression and 1,000 other factors that are at play. It's just as untrue as just eat what skinny people eat and you'll be skinny, because it ignores systemic oppression, our genes, and 1,000 other factors that are going on. So even though it technically doesn't have anything to do with money, I wanted to keep it in here and talk about that, because just know that there is nothing wrong with you or your body. And I will link a ton of resources down below that kind of helped me to start deconstructing diet culture and deconstructing fat phobia, that have so many studies done by experts, evaluated by experts, that show that that's not true. Just like we have so many studies in the financial field done by experts, evaluated by experts, that prove that what he is saying is not true.
Been married 50 years and they have a fabulous marriage and they can't keep their hands off of each other. So what did you guys do? Because other people I know about killed themselves, and I want to know how you get a marriage like that, you know? And so I'm going to talk to people who are winning at something and do what they do, and not somebody that's just got a feeling or an opinion, because that'll make you broke your whole life. So all of that is how I came to the conclusion that, and through the faith lens, the borrower is slave to the lender, and I can't find anywhere in Scripture it says to get a car payment, although Jesus did say they were all in one accord.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I could actually, and I probably should, make a whole video about this like whole linking debt to Christianity and spirituality and sin and morality. And I've talked about it on other reaction videos that I've done of Dave's. But just like in general, Christians just like taking a passage from the Bible and using that to support their agenda doesn't paint the whole picture. I could give you a bunch of passages that from the Bible that support my agenda and support the fact that debt is not bad, more so than just the borrower slave to the lender, which could also be interpreted as like fucking Jesus being a communist, but whatever, okay? But the whole point is Dave uses the Bible to shame people and to support his narrative because it makes him money. Let's be honest here. It is not because he just like truly believes that he's doing the right thing.
Okay. So all of that to say, there's no possible way you should ever buy a car with a car payment. I would ride a bicycle before I had a car with a car payment. And it's not forever. I'm just going to save up and pay for it. But it sounds like you have the cash to pay cash for the car you want.
We're not far off. We have about $7,000 above our emergency fund, and I would like to spend a few more months saving up the additional amount. But she's, I guess, a little anxious, doesn't want to work, or doesn't want to wait. She commutes an hour each way to work currently, and so
and it's her
I can
car.
understand being anxious.
It's her
yes,
car.
Sir, her car.
What is she driving now?
She drives a 2001 Mustang right now.
How many miles on it?
Just about 200,000.
I would move up in car now. I agree with her, but I would do it with the $7,000 in cash and then save up and do it again next year.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so I actually do want to say that I can get on board with what Dave is saying. I'm glad that he pointed out that, like, he agrees that the situation that she's in right now, if they have the money to upgrade her car, that probably should be a priority because safety is concerned here. Like, they live in a cold state, she's commuting an hour to and from work, and she's in a car that at any point in time could leave her stranded. And if you have the means to be able to upgrade your vehicle, doing that sooner rather than later could save her tons of time, safety, also money, because then you're not stuck just last minute trying to rush and get a car. If you have to miss out on work, if you have to settle for a car because you need it now, you've got some time here to kind of like decide over the next few weeks, make a decision, get a car. And they have cash to be able to either pay for a car in full if she finds a car that she loves and they're comfortable with and that fits within their budget, fantastic. But if not, and they want to use that $7,000, that's a hefty down payment on a car that could be very nice that she could keep for a very long time and just have a smaller car payment that again would still allow them to invest and to build wealth over the long term. So I actually am very glad that he said that getting her a new car needs to be a priority, but I would not draw the same conclusion that you necessarily have to decide to get a car right now and then go through the process of still saving and then therefore having to resell your car later on. I don't think a lot of people want to go through that hassle of having to buy a car and then within a year sell it and buy a new car. If you do, great. If that's how you want to go about it, awesome. That's totally valid. However, I just wish that he would also present that it would be valid for them to just buy the car that she wants now if it fits in their budget, even if it means financing the car if they have a good credit score. However, it is also important to note that this person seems to be following Dave pretty closely, which means that he might have destroyed, or they might have destroyed their credit. And that would be a very good point of contention to say that credit scores do matter, because in this case, they could lower their car payment with all of the money that they have to put toward that car, keep the car payment really small, and then continue to invest if they have a higher credit score. However, if they have a lower credit score, that could mean that financing isn't a good quote-unquote financial decision, or it could cost them more money where they aren't leveraging that debt and couldn't leverage it in the same way that they could if they had a higher credit score.
Both of you get your way. I want her to have the nicer car she wants, but I'm with you. She waits till next year to get it. In the meantime, you can move her up about 3 times as good a car as she's in now, or 4 times as good a car as she can now with that car plus $7,000.
Right. Well, honestly, I didn't think of it that way, and that's a good idea. I sure appreciate your help, Dave.
Yeah, but the big thing here is if you get the why, that whole diatribe I went on,
Right.
If you get the why behind why you don't do car payments, then it's not a matter of if I do them, because I'm not going to do them, but how do I work around it and still accomplish some of the goals? Once I take car payments off the table, other creative answers start, like staging it, like we're talking about, start coming up on the table. But the typical person just goes, I want it, I'm going to go buy it.
Okay, but to what he's saying, if you left car payments on the table and then gave people the education to say, hey, here's how investing works, here's how saving works, here's how credit scores work and how they impact your ability to take out low interest rate loans, this is all of your options, whether you want to finance or not, whether you want to finance in full or not. Then you open up way more than he's opened up. Yeah, you opened up the option of buy a semi-nice car now and then resell it later after you've saved some more. But that's literally one other option. That's the only actual option he's presenting here, other than just buying the car and then that's it. That's the car you get that we can afford in full right now. By not having the conversation about how people can use debt to their advantage and it not to be a bad financial decision, he's doing the exact opposite of what he's saying he's doing. He's closing the doors to a plethora of creative solutions that could involve debt, but not necessarily have to involve debt, or could use varying levels of debt. We see this a lot, the mental gymnastics that he goes through sounds convincing when it's presented this way and when you don't know your other options. Because a lot of people who are calling don't. Before I did this for a job and really did a lot of research into this, I would have watched this, not all of it. I still ethically would have disagreed with a lot of it, but this last clip and been oh, okay, that makes sense. I agree with that. I agree. You don't necessarily need to go out and buy a new car, and you can still upgrade later or still buy a better car now because you're in a financial situation to be able to do that. And that, okay, I guess debt, if debt's off the table, it's a great option, but I would have never known what other options there were. I would have never known that not all debt is bad, and that in this case scenario for these people, if it fit in their budget, they could make more money off of financing a car than not financing a car. So anyway, there's more to this video, but it's basically just his outro and some rambling. That's pretty much all I have to say. I agree with where he was heading with that last point, but we have very different interpretations of how debt plays a role into that and how debt opens up your financial options rather than what he's saying that it closes off your financial options. Yeah, Luckily, the end of the last half of the video was a lot less problematic than the first half. I really like these videos because I feel like it brings up conversations that I think are really important. I really hope that you enjoyed and you learned something cool. If you did, please remember to give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm, helps boost this video to the top. That way more people can find this content. And I will see you all next time.